Chapter 1667. And there were 3 of them. 9-colored deer had accompanied Ruan Yaozhu to read many ancient books, and knew how terrifying these vexing demons were. W. R. and Wayna calm. The vexing demons were not inner demons, but true external demons. They were all under the command of the vast freedom demon lord, who was known as the lord of the sex world. Each vexing demon had an independent consciousness, and would actively interfere with cultivators' tribulations. They were cruel, despicable, and cunning. They were the best at grasping the flaws in people's minds. These demons were invisible, and could travel through the void freely. They were not only unafraid of tribulation thunder, but also immune to almost all spells. They could only resist at the consciousness level. They were a great threat to cultivators. Countless cultivators had survived the tribulation thunder and the 5 demons, but failed to resist the vexing demon. They eventually failed the tribulations and died. Even one of these things was fatal, but now there were 3 of them. The 9-colored deer only looked at the 3 warping shadows from afar, and felt extremely annoyed. It was as if there was a ball of dirty and messy cotton stuck in its chest. If they were to pounce on Ruan Yaozhu together, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, the 3 vexing demons had completely appeared in the void. Their distorted bodies also solidified into human forms. One of them was frowning in grief. The other was laughing loudly, as if he had gone mad. The other had a ferocious expression on his face. They all looked like Li Qingshan. 9-colored deer immediately looked at Li Qingshan. Wasn't Ruan Yaozhu's vexing him? With Ruan Yaozhu's Tao of nature, she should not have encountered the vexing demon. It was all because of his disturbance that her 5 ens were burning, and her mind was in chaos. She called out to the vexing demon internally and externally. Li Qingshan, look at what you have done. What should we do? Li Qingshan rubbed his nose. The evidence was conclusive, and he could not deny it. He smiled and said, "Inner demons can only rely on themselves. I still have a way to deal with them. I'll greet them, and ask them to be lenient." 9-colored deer shouted, "Greet them? Easy for you to say. Do you think the demon of vexation is raised by your family?" The 3 vexing devils only had Ruan Yaozhu in their eyes. They were filled with greed and longing. When a cultivator failed to cross the tribulation, they could divide up the shattered primordial spirit, which was extremely beneficial to them. They were just about to pounce towards Ruan Yaozhu when they suddenly felt an extremely familiar aura. Yet it contained great terror and great dignity, causing them to feel a chill run down their spines. They couldn't help but look down in unison, and only now did they notice that the divine statue was actually a living existence. Moreover, it was waving towards them. "Come here," Li Qingshan said. The 3 vexed demons who looked like Li Qingshan were originally filled with sorrow, joy, and anger. But now they were in a trance. The voice resounded directly in their hearts, overshadowing the thunder in the sky. It had an irresistible magic. Thus, they floated down from the sky in a daze, and arrived in front of Li Qingshan. They looked up at Li Qingshan in a daze. Li Qingshan said, "Sit." They were overwhelmed by the favor and quickly sat down. They continued to look up at Li Qingshan in a daze, like 3 loyal dogs waiting for their master's next order. Even their faces became blurry, and they no longer looked like Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan no longer cared about them. This kind of incorporeal existence was almost immune to the damage of all spells. But from another perspective, it was easier to be affected and charmed. Without a stable body, it was extremely easy to be influenced and charmed. That was why the body was so important to cultivators. Once the body was destroyed, and one became an undead immortal, the possibility of becoming a true immortal was basically cut off. All vexation was born from this, and all hope was born from this. Impressive, Li Qingshan. The 9-colored deer's eyes widened as she blurted out. She had accompanied Ruan Yaozhu to read so many ancient books, but she had never heard of a demon of vexation being controlled. Li Qingshan shook his head. "It's not over yet." In the void, a long rope hung down at some point. It was a coarse hemp rope stained with blood. It swayed in the wind, but it was not affected by the tribulation lightning at all. Ruan Yaozhu hung at the end of the rope. Her slender neck was almost snapped, and her head was tilted to one side in an unnatural manner. Her face was purple, her eyes were rolled back, and her tongue was sticking out. She no longer looked beautiful and amiable, only ferocious and terrifying. "What is that?" The nine-colored deer turned pale with fright. She smelled the strong stench of a corpse in the wind. It was also mixed with the stench of incontinence when someone was hung to death. It made her feel so disgusted that she wanted to vomit. She refused to admit that it was Yuan Yaoju's appearance, but she was extremely flustered. It was as if a nightmare had come true. Death demon. Li Qingshan's expression also became a bit more serious. Whether it was a hero or a beautiful woman, they were all equally disgusting and terrifying after death. Yuan Yaozhu originally had the will to die, intending to atone for her sins to the sect. She was almost forced by Li Qingshan to go through the tribulation. Although her will to live was ignited after hearing his words, the demon would not let go of the flaw left in her heart. Moreover, Li Qingshan guessed that this was probably related to him controlling the 3 vexation demons. The tribulation had always been stronger when meeting strong opponents, and outsiders were not allowed to interfere. Death demons were much more difficult to deal with than vexation demons. According to normal procedures, Yuan Yaozhu could only encounter one when she went through the 7th tribulation. In the past, Li Qingshan had almost been killed by this thing. He encountered a drowned Li Qingshan, which was equally disgusting and terrifying. In the end, it relied on its own primordial spirit to return, and chose to merge with him, to continue this 9 heavens road. Just now it had suppressed that death demon. At this time, the tribulation was nearing its end. Yuan Yaozhu was only one step away from successfully passing the tribulation. "We must not give it a chance to attack," the 9-colored deer urged. "Quickly greet it." However, before Li Qingshan could speak, that death demon actually spoke first. It bowed to Li Qingshan and said lifelessly, "So it is the successor of the Heavenly Lord here. My apologies for not recognizing you." Li Qingshan said solemnly, "Since you know me, why don't you come down and have a seat?" The death demon's eyes were dazed for a moment, but it immediately recovered and said sinisterly, "As expected of the successor of the Heavenly Lord, if you are going through the tribulation, I will definitely retreat and not make things difficult for you." He then glanced at the 3 vexation demons and warned, "Since you are the successor of the Heavenly Lord, you better not break the rules of the Heavenly Lord. Otherwise, you will be devoured by the demons and die a horrible death." After saying that, he was about to pounce on Yuan Yaozhu, but his body suddenly froze, revealing a look of horror. A vertical eye split open on Li Qingshan's forehead, which was burning with endless black flames. "If the great carefree heaven was here, I would respect him, but you dare to threaten me? You actually cultivated the apocalyptic divine fire," Death Demon said hatefully. "You dare to disturb the laws of the tribulation. The Heavenly Lord will not let you off." At this time, the tribulation was coming to an end. Yuan Yaozhu's yang spirit had almost completely transformed into a yang spirit, but the green light around her body was also extremely dim. This was the moment when she was at her weakest. With just a light pounce, he could devour her completely. This kind of temptation was almost unbearable, even under the threat of the apocalyptic divine fire. Li Qingshan came up with an idea. He said, "Why don't we make a bet? I'll open up my mind and allow you to possess me. If you can make me move at all, I'll no longer interfere with this matter." His voice contained a mysterious and strange temptation. "Good." Death Demon was overjoyed. "Watch me devour your primordial spirit first, then her primordial spirit." Its figure disappeared into thin air, and suddenly appeared behind Li Qingshan, pouncing on him. As expected, Li Qingshan opened his mind and did not resist, only closing his eyes. Death Demon first saw boundless darkness and heard boundless silence. It had never seen such deep darkness before, and gradually heard all kinds of strange sounds. A while later, Li Qingshan opened his eyes and spat out Death Demon with a spurt. Death Demon's black and twisted body was almost out of shape. It curled into a ball on the ground, shivering. Black liquid flowed down its face, as if it was crying. The 9-colored deer said in surprise, What happened to it?" Li Qingshan smiled and said, "It's fine." Chapter 1668. The nine-colored deer only saw the three demons of vexation continue to stare at Li Qingshan in a daze, completely unaware of everything that was happening around them. Meanwhile, the dead demon's body twisted in various ways, as if it was about to collapse. Isn't this kid a little too powerful now? Is the Book of Freedom so powerful? Forget it, we are going to the beast path soon anyway. He can do whatever he wants. The last tribulation lightning fell, and the tribulation clouds quickly dissipated. Moonlight shone through the gaps between the clouds, quiet and magnificent. Wan Yaoju's primordial spirit returned to her body and floated down from the sky. Her sleeves and dress fluttered in the air like a butterfly after a storm. She fell from the sky and landed lightly on Li Qingshan's palm. Wan Yaoju felt the heat in his palm, and did not reject the spiritual power that came from it. Doesn't he know that maybe she is going to fight to the death with him soon? He is still so confident in his own story. She is now a celestial being, and will not be charmed so easily. Even if he knows that she is going to be his enemy, he will still do the same. He has always been so domineering, never caring about what others think, and only sticking to his own path. When the last thunderclap completely disappeared, the whole world became quiet. Her mind had never been so clear before. All the sadness, joy, and anger seemed to have left her. The tribulation clouds dispersed and the night sky was clean. Her eyes reflected the bright galaxy. She just wanted to lie down quietly for a while. The tribulation was over, and next, there would be a more difficult choice. Li Qingshan also looked up at the galaxy. He looked like a human but not a human, like an ancient god statue. However, he was smiling, sincerely happy for the safety of the woman in his palm. Nine-colored deer couldn't help but hold its breath, feeling that this scene was very beautiful. It suddenly believed that he was full of kindness toward Wan Yaoju. Then it suddenly shook its head. No, did you forget how he used you to threaten Yaoju? I must have been charmed by him. At this time, Li Qingshan calmly continued to tell his story, as if nothing had happened. Blood maze. Evil Jiuying. Child. Not only did he not try to charm Wan Yaoju, but he also tried his best not to show any emotion, so as not to affect her judgment. He told her everything he had experienced. Wan Yaoju listened attentively, and was gradually moved. Like ripples appearing on the surface of a tranquil lake, she could no longer calm down. In an instant all the sadness, joy, and anger returned and filled his heart. The rest of the story was not long, and Li Qingshan quickly finished it. Wan Yaoju was speechless for a long time. The gaze she looked at Li Qingshan with was filled with sorrow and gentleness, like a mother looking at her injured child. For a moment, she completely forgot the pain and anger of being deceived. Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. He was not used to such pity. Instead, he was used to disdain and hostility. He was also used to responding with anger and iron fists. Perhaps to him, kindness was the hardest to bear. Ever since he came to the human realm, she had given him endless kindness and trust. But what could he do in return? The nine-colored deer was extremely shocked. You are that demon star. However, he was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Spirit Venerable Guihai had declared him a traitor without hesitation. No wonder he had such methods and such power. Even the twisted death demon on the ground raised its head with difficulty to look at Li Qingshan. It seemed to be extremely shocked and suddenly enlightened. At this moment, the red star in the night sky was shining with red light. So don't think about going to the demonic beast path. No one can stay out of the great tribulation of heaven and earth. If you can't be a friend, you can only be an enemy. Li Qingshan said cautiously. Wan Yaoju and he were entangled too deeply, so she had to make a choice. Originally, she had no choice at all. Sealing the 100-herb garden was equivalent to betraying the sect, and she would definitely be sent into reincarnation. So Li Qingshan had to help her become a human immortal. The status of a human immortal was not the same as that of an ordinary true disciple. As long as she was willing to draw a clear line between herself and Li Qingshan, the myriad phenomenon sect would not punish her too harshly. Moreover, after becoming a human immortal, she would have the power to protect herself in the great tribulation of heaven and earth, no matter which side she chose to stand on. Of course, in the future, when the moment of war really came, he would not be merciful. Today, he would take it as settling a grudge, but that was the ending he did not want to see the most. Some people might not believe it, but he actually hated pain very much. He had already done everything he could. Next, he could only wait for her choice. To return to the righteous path, or to accompany him and become a demon. Wan Yaozhu lowered her head and did not speak. But not long after, she stood up and faced Li Qingshan. The thoughts of a human immortal were as fast as lightning. She had already made a decision in her heart. Li Qingshan, maybe what you said is true. She shook her head lightly. But you just lied to me, destroyed my 100-herb garden, and used Jiu Er's life to threaten me. I will not believe you again. Fine. Li Qingshan sighed softly, unable to hide his disappointment. His heart became heavier. Was this beautiful butterfly going to be torn apart by his own hands one day? Damn it! What a cruel fate. The 9-colored deer also sighed in her heart. Wan Yaozhu made the right choice, but for some reason, she was not happy. Wan Yaozhu pursed her lips and stared at Li Qingshan. Her lips suddenly revealed a sly smile. She tilted her head and said, "This way we are even." Li Qingshan was stunned and then laughed. His hearty laughter resounded throughout the 100-herb garden, filled with undisguised joy. Wait, don't be happy too early. I won't listen to your side of the story. I have to see it with my own eyes before deciding what to choose. Wan Yaozhu said with a serious face. Of course, Li Qingshan said softly. Actually, you don't have to make a choice. This is not a benevolent path. It will definitely be filled with cruelty and slaughter. As long as you stay by my side, I will do my best to protect you. He reached out his other hand and lightly drew a line in the air. Like cutting open a curtain of a movie, a black demon cave appeared. Wan Yaozhu shook her head. Didn't you tell me that the path of nature is filled with cruelty and slaughter? Then how can I escape? Also, not making a choice is also a choice. She glanced at Li Qingshan deeply again and said, "See you again." Afterwards, she called over the 9-colored deer and flew towards the demon cavern. The 9-colored deer galloped in the deep demon cave and shouted, "So this kid is the source of the great calamity. His opponents are all gods and Buddhas. Hey blockhead, are we really going to stand on his side? But he seems to be good to you. He can be considered a strong backer." She suddenly stopped talking and saw that Wan Yaozhu's face was filled with pain and confusion. So even if she became a human immortal, there were still problems that she couldn't understand. Her decisiveness and confidence were all faked. She just didn't want to make him sad. Writing Pen Chinese Network. Chapter 1669. Li Qingshan felt extremely carefree, as he had settled one of his worries. He looked at Li Fengyuan and smiled. Kid, you should go too. The demon domain is your old man's territory now. You can be a god's second generation as you please. Under the dead Bodhi tree, Li Fengyuan shook his head. Big old man. I have somewhere else to go. I only stayed here to see you again. It's time to leave now. Li Qingshan didn't ask where he was going. His clothes and aura had already revealed the path he was going to take. Sigh, don't you want to say anything to me? Originally, I had a lot of things to say, but after hearing your story. Li Fengyuan suddenly exhaled deeply. His expression seemed like he was smiling and sighing at the same time. There was even a hint of teasing. Li Qingshan really is Li Qingshan. This made Li Qingshan a little embarrassed. He seemed to be a little too sentimental in the story, which made this kid laugh at him. Thus, he flicked his finger lightly. Li Fengyuan let out an ouch and leaned his head back. He had already eaten ahead. He rubbed his head and looked at Li Qingshan indignantly. You've already become a god. Why are you still so frivolous? Your old man will always be your old man. Li Qingshan smiled very proudly. Li Fengyuan glanced at the trembling death demon and sighed in his heart. He knew better than Wan Yaozhu what the path Li Qingshan had taken meant. If it was someone else, they definitely wouldn't be able to smile now. Big old man, I should go. Go. I wish you a safe journey. Don't regret your choice. Of course. Li Fengyuan put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. A golden Buddha's light descended from the sky. Li Qingshan's expression became serious. The extraordinary power contained in the Buddha's light was something that even he had to look up to. Li Fengyuan looked deeply at Li Qingshan. Big old man. Although the path you've taken is filled with pain and despair, you're not alone. Bathed in the golden Buddha's light, his voice became grand and far-reaching. Li Qingshan seemed to have understood something. When the Buddha's aura completely disappeared, he pondered for a moment. It's time to get that thing. But before that, I have to get rid of those 2 flies outside. Wan Jianfeng cultivated the imperial sword Heavenly Book, and was the only sword cultivator among the direct disciples. His battle prowess was second only to Li Qingshan and Chao Tianjiao. However, if Li Qingshan wanted to kill him, it would be no different from killing a fly. The only troublesome thing was that sword cultivators were usually unyielding. They might not be as tactful as Pai Yangqiu. If he was forced into a corner, it would be troublesome for him to self-destruct his yang spirit. As soon as Wan Jianfeng's life lamp went out in the myriad appearance sect, that old turtle would definitely be on guard. However, if he were to leave quietly and let the 2 of them go just like that, he wouldn't be able to think it through. Especially that Chen Yushu, who had scolded him tens of thousands of times outside, saying all sorts of bad things about him. Li Qingshan's mind turned. Seeing the 3 demons of vexation and 1 demon of death, he couldn't help but smile, and his big hand shrouded them. Great carefree heavens, you have been on my back before, and I have also cultivated your Tao of carefree. Our friendship is not shallow. Today, I will borrow your people. Outside the herb garden, Wan Jianfeng coldly stared at Chen Yushu's back. Chen Yushu's face was dejected, mixed with some resentment. 2 hours ago, he had solemnly vowed to Wan Jianfeng that as long as he said a few words, he could make Wan Yaozhu open the herb garden and obediently hand over the phoenix. However, he had shouted thousands of times outside. Whether it was good words of persuasion or stern threats, he had almost worn out his mouth, but he still didn't get any response. Yaozhu, you don't believe me, but you believe that damned Li Qingshan. Serves you right for falling to this state. In the future, when the myriad appearance sect sends you into reincarnation, don't blame me, Chen Yushu, for not helping you. Chen Yushu couldn't help but say, and Wan Jianfeng felt even more disdain. It was no wonder that Wan Yaozhu had no interest in this person, even after living together for hundreds of years, but had a special liking for Li Qingshan. If he was Wan Yaozhu, he would absolutely not be willing to become Tao companions with this guy. Everyone in the myriad appearance sect knew about Chen Yushu's ambition towards Wan Yaozhu. Later, because he was jealous of Li Qingshan, his body was destroyed in a duel, and he was expelled from the herb garden. Later, he was expelled from the myriad appearance sect by the eldest senior brother Li Qingshan. He had a blood feud with Li Qingshan, and he was also full of resentment towards Wan Yaozhu. Wan Jianfeng was infatuated with the way of the sword all his life, and he never cared about friendship. However, Dai Mingfan called Chen Yushu back so quickly. This sisterly friendship was really cold. Chen Yushu didn't care about Wan Jianfeng's opinion. When he mentioned the 3 words Li Qingshan, his expression became twisted and sinister. If there was no Li Qingshan, he would still be the head steward of the herb garden. He would most likely have already crossed 5 heavenly tribulations and become a true disciple of the myriad appearance sect. And he would have the qualifications to become Tao companions with Wan Yaozhu. And all of this was destroyed by Li Qingshan. No one knew what kind of days he had lived these years. And even more so, no one knew what kind of mood he had when Ren Ayo found him. So when he returned to the myriad appearance sect, he couldn't wait to rush to the herb garden. Rather than saying it was to persuade Wan Yaozhu, it would be better to say that he wanted to prove to Wan Yaozhu that he was right. Of course, none of this was important. Even if Wan Yaozhu handed over the phoenix now, she could no longer continue to control the herb garden. That woman had to pay the price for her stupidity, and he, Chen Yushu, was about to become the true master of the herb garden. Junior brother Chen, come in. At this time, a familiar voice came from the herb garden. Yaozhu. Chen Yushu was stupefied as he listened. All of those feelings of love that had been buried by resentment suddenly gushed out, and he hurriedly walked towards the large door that was interwoven with green vines. Yaozhu, I'm here. As long as you hand over the herb garden, I will definitely plead for you with senior sister Dai. The center of the large door rippled with a dark green halo, and the herb garden was once again opened. That voice said again, "Junior brother Wan, come in as well." When Wan Jianfeng heard this, he couldn't help but walk towards the large door. His heart was also filled with a beautiful impression of Wan Yaozhu. She had always been so kind, so worthy of trust. Walking to the front of the large door, he watched helplessly as Chen Yushu disappeared inside. His heart suddenly shivered, and he stopped walking. That's not right. Why did she call me junior brother? According to the myriad appearance ranking list, he had always been Wan Yaozhu's senior brother. A large black hand suddenly stretched out from the inside of the door, and Wan Jianfeng was dragged inside. Wan Jianfeng was greatly alarmed, but he simply didn't have time to react. The large door rushed towards him, and with a flash of light before his eyes, he was already dragged into the herb garden. Only now did he clearly see that the person who grabbed him was a huge statue that seemed like a human, yet not a human, like a beast, yet not a beast. It seemed like it had been sitting here since the beginning of time. A pair of cyan eyes looked down from high above, looking at him with a smile that was yet not a smile. Only then did it suddenly have human emotions. Junior brother Wan, you are so awe-inspiring outside. This voice was deep as if it came from the depths of the earth, and grand like the thunder in the sky. It was definitely not a voice that a human could make. But for some reason, Wan Jianfeng recognized who this voice belonged to in an instant. Li Qingshan. Writing Pin Chinese Network. Chapter 1670. Chen Yushu charged into the 100 herb garden, as if he was intoxicated. Looking left and right, he didn't see any trace of Wan Yaozhu, and only saw a black shadow lying in front of him. Why is there a mountain here? Suddenly hearing the 3 words Li Qingshan, he was shocked. He looked up and saw Wan Jianfeng being pinched in someone's hand. He exclaimed, "Senior brother Wan." At this time, he seemed to realize something. His face turned pale. He slowly and stiffly raised his head, and looked up at the arm that was pinching Wan Jianfeng. Only then did he see that the black mountain was actually a living existence. Boundless pressure fell from the sky. Shen Yushu's knees softened, and he knelt on the ground. "No, you're not. This is impossible." Li Qingshan just glanced at Shen Yushu, and did not take this clown to heart. "Li Qingshan, you dare to come back." Wan Jianfeng tried to put up a struggle, but he was unable to break free from the huge black hand. His heart completely sank. If it were just Li Qingshan's clone before him, he would still be able to put up a fight. But the Li Qingshan before him definitely possessed the strength of a human immortal, no, an evil god. It was not something he could contend with right now. Just the pressure he gave off was enough to suffocate him. "If I don't come back, won't you all go to heaven? Junior brother Wan, do you want to live or die?" "So what if I want to die? So what if I want to live?" "If you want to die, I will send you on your way now. I guarantee that you will die thoroughly, and your soul will be destroyed." Li Qingshan tightened his 5 fingers, his eyes revealing 2 spots of red light. In an instant, Wan Jianfeng felt like he was submerged in a boundless sea of blood, unable to breathe. "If you want to live, then surrender to me. I can help you cross 6 heavenly tribulations and become a human immortal." At this time, the green color in the herb garden was far more than the yellow color, and there was still a huge amount of spiritual power to be absorbed. As a peak young spirit cultivator, Wan Jianfeng was only half a step away from the human immortal realm. As long as he received a little inspiration from Li Qingshan like Wan Yaozhu, and instilled a large amount of spiritual power into him, he would definitely be able to attract 6 heavenly tribulations. "If you can really help me pass the 6th heavenly tribulation, I will definitely pledge my allegiance to you." Wan Jianfeng's eyes lit up. He looked very tempted, but in his heart he was thinking, as long as I go through 6 heavenly tribulations, how can you control me? With one glance, Li Qingshan saw through his scheme. He laughed loudly and said, "Do you think I'm stupid?" Suddenly, his smile disappeared and he said, "Junior martial brother Wan, make your move." Li Qingshan, since the ancient times, demons and demons have never existed together. Even if I, Wan Jianfeng, die, I will never associate myself with demon folk. The long sword on Wan Jianfeng's back was unsheathed, and the sound was like that of a dragon. It was like a bright sun soaring into the sky, illuminating the herb garden as if it was daytime. At the same time, his yang spirit left his body and entered the dazzling sword light, merging with the long sword. One with the sword. Immediately, all of the white light receded, only leaving behind a hazy layer of light that enveloped the blade of the sword. Wan Jianfeng knew he only had one chance to strike, so he used the most powerful sword form of his life right from the start. He poured all of his mental and physical efforts into the strike. The sword had condensed before it was unleashed, but his yang spirit was already deeply damaged. If he wanted to injure the enemy, he had to injure himself first. The moment the sword moved to the limit would be the moment when his yang spirit shattered. This sword was a sword that could threaten the heretic god. At that moment, Wan Jianfeng no longer wished to escape. He only wished to injure Li Qingshan, so that he could live up to his name as a sword cultivator. Two specks of white, needle-like light reflected in Li Qingshan's eyes. Even he was slightly moved, as if he had been stunned by the power of the strike. Afterwards, he extended his right hand and raised two fingers, clamping them together gently and catching the edge of the sword. Your swordsmanship isn't bad, and your determination is even better. It's just that it takes too long to activate. Most importantly, in the 72 Marquis formation, Li Qingshan only needed to slightly activate the formation to disintegrate Wan Jianfeng's sword momentum. Wan Jianfeng's strongest strike had died before it could even be unleashed. He felt extremely aggrieved and roared, Li Qingshan, you're so despicable. I'd rather die than submit to you. That's not up to you. Li Qingshan's eyes became dark and deep, like two bottomless abysses. Wan Jianfeng felt as if his mind had left the longsword, and all of his mind had been sucked into it. The bottomless abyss was boundless darkness. In the boundless darkness, there were countless whispers. There were men, women, old and young, all filled with the strongest worship and the most fanatical faith. At first, these voices were as soft as mosquitoes, but in the blink of an eye, they turned into loud chanting, and in the next moment, they were like a tsunami. This was the faith and wish of all living beings in the devil area. They worshipped the supreme ruler who freed them from endless sin and suffering, Li Qingshan. Wan Jianfeng could not help but feel a sense of admiration as well. When he recalled Li Qingshan's valiant posture as he led the army outside Black Cloud City, he almost wanted to bow down to Li Qingshan as well, but his heart suddenly shuddered. He roared out furiously, "No, I'll never admire you." The battle in Black Cloud City had a great impact on Wan Jianfeng, not because he had narrowly escaped death, but because whether it was Li Qingshan or Li Liehua, the fighting spirit they displayed was far superior to his. Even some ordinary soldiers were more determined to die than him, a great sword cultivator. This was simply a great humiliation to him. And he also understood why he couldn't cross the sixth heavenly tribulation. That was why he had learned from the painful experience and honed the sword move that faced death calmly and brought the enemy down with him. Wan Jianfeng would rather die than become a follower of Li Qingshan. But he knew that if he continued like this, sooner or later, he would be engulfed by the tsunami of voices. He immediately made up his mind and prepared to explode his yang spirit. A yang spirit cultivator's mind was as fast as lightning. With just a thought, he could make all the supernatural power contained in the yang spirit go out of control and explode. This was a kind of artificial qi deviation, and it was almost impossible to stop. However, Li Qingshan was already prepared. You three hurry up and attack. Three black shadows ignored the sword light and rushed into Wan Jianfeng's yang spirit. They were the three demons of vexation that Li Qingshan had subdued. Wan Jianfeng's desire to die immediately faded, but his desire to live became as fierce as fire. If a person was compared to a country, the heart of the people was the king. At this time, foreign enemies were invading, and the king was about to fight to the death. However, there were three great loyal ministers in the court, and all of them wanted to negotiate peace. The king's determination was shaken. After all, survival was the greatest instinct of people. A moment later, the three demons of vexation left Wan Jianfeng's yang spirit. All of them were dispirited, as if they had spent a lot of effort. Li Qingshan only allowed them to disturb Wan Jianfeng, but he didn't allow them to kill Wang Jianfeng. As a result, the energy they consumed couldn't be replenished. However, none of them had any complaints about this. Being able to die for Li Qingshan was their greatest honor. Li Qingshan released 2 fingers, and Wang Jianfeng separated from his sword. His yang spirit returned to his body, and immediately fell from the sky. He held the long sword with both hands and bowed deeply to Li Qingshan. He said in fear and trepidation, "My king, please forgive me. Just now, I don't know the general situation, and don't know what's right. That's why I want to fight against my king." Li Qingshan sighed. "If it was in the past, I would definitely grant you death." "That is what I deserve," Wang Jianfeng said, and was about to cut his own throat with his sword. "Forget it." Li Qingshan immediately lost interest in talking to him. He said indifferently, "Wang Jianfeng, not only will I pardon you, but I will also help you pass the 6th heavenly tribulation." Wang Jianfeng was moved to tears. "My king's magnanimity is as vast as the sea. I dare not accept it." Writing pen Chinese net. Chapter 1671. Shen Yushu, who was by the side, was also stunned by this method, almost forgetting to be afraid. It turned out that in the face of absolute power, not only could one not live, one could not even die. Li Qingshan sat on the withered ground expressionlessly. He really did seem like a statue of a god. Who knew what this unruly great sword cultivator was feeling right now when he saw how humble this great sword cultivator was? He only continued to use the Qilin transformation, and breathed in and out spirit qi. He was bent on refining the 100-herb garden completely, not leaving a single blade of grass for the enemy. After gathering some more spirit qi, he lightly tapped Wang Jianfeng's forehead, injecting the surging spirit qi and his understanding of the sword Dao into Wang Jianfeng's yang spirit. Wang Jianfeng's body trembled as his eyes widened. In an instant, the tribulation clouds surged and condensed again. With the sound of thunder, they rolled over together, instantly covering all the starlight. Li Qingshan looked up at the sky. The might of this heavenly tribulation far exceeded that of Wan Yaozhu's just now. After all, Wang Jianfeng did not cultivate the heavenly book of nature, but the heavenly book of sword control. Naturally, he did not receive such preferential treatment. Not only did the might of the heavenly tribulation not decrease, but it also became more violent. This was the law of the heavenly tribulation. The stronger your combat strength, the more powerful the heavenly tribulation. The path of a sword cultivator had to undergo thousands of tempering. If Wang Jianfeng perished, Spirit Emperor Guihai would definitely be vigilant. However, Li Qingshan still chose to take a gamble. If he succeeded, he would gain a powerful ally. Furthermore, what he wanted was not just that. Wang Jianfeng bowed deeply at Li Qingshan and soared into the sky, preparing to transcend the tribulation. At that moment, distorted black shadows crawled out of the void. They were vexing demons, but there were more than 3 of them. The advantage of a sword cultivator was that their minds were pure, and their willpower was firm. They were not easily disturbed by mental demons, so it was not easy for them to attract demons. But now, Wang Jianfeng's mental demons were stronger than Wan Yaozhu's. This was not because of faith. True faith was spontaneous. It came from the inside out, after contemplation and enlightenment. As for Wang Jianfeng's faith, it was forcefully instilled. Li Qingshan's actions were no different from those of a devil. In fact, he was even more unreasonable than the average devil. To disturb a cultivator, an ordinary devil would at least need to go through a few steps, such as feeling. However, Li Qingshan, with the fanatical worship of all living beings in the boundless devil domain, bypassed the feeling, and thinking, and directly crushed Wang Jianfeng's self-consciousness, causing him to have a fanatical worship of himself. At the same time, he also had a huge self-contradiction. And these self-contradictions were covered up by this fanatical worship. Because he could never question his own God, he could never reconcile himself. To a cultivator, this was basically the same as pronouncing a death sentence and severing their path of cultivation. For a sword cultivator, it was akin to exposing his corpse in the wilderness, turning from a sword cultivator to a sword slave. If it weren't for the fact that his cultivation was infinitely close to the sixth heavenly tribulation, Li Qingshan wouldn't have been able to improve his cultivation any further, unless he was completely refined into something like a puppet. Wan Jianfeng was like a treasured sword that had been twisted. Its insides were filled with cracks that could not be repaired. Every crack was a flaw, a wound, and the smell of blood released from it would definitely attract many sharks. However, Li Qingshan wasn't alarmed. Instead, he was happy. This was exactly what he wanted. Not only did he want a sword slave that had gone through the sixth heavenly tribulation, he also wanted to subdue a death demon. Li Qingshan watched the sky as he continued to refine the 100 herb garden. He condensed the surging spiritual energy into dark green beads, which formed a string and wrapped around his arm. As if he had completely forgotten Shen Yushu's existence, Shen Yushu also tried his best to operate the heavenly book of nature, allowing his aura to completely merge with the surrounding environment. He wanted to be forgotten. Boom! The first tribulation lightning fell. In a split second, the sky was filled with thunder, weapons shuttled back and forth, and demons danced wildly. Wan Jianfeng, one man and one sword, resisted this vast and mighty heavenly might. This was the lofty sentiments of a sword cultivator. However, before the sword was raised, the heart was first in chaos. Feeling, thinking, and knowing, the 5 yin blazed. There was an indescribable sadness coming from within. He pulled out his sword and looked around, his heart at a loss. When the last tribulation lightning fell, the clouds parted and the moon appeared. Li Qingshan had completely refined the 100 herb garden into a string of huge spirit beads. There were a total of 36 beads, which coiled around his forearm like a string of prayer beads. It reminded him of little Anne, and he stared at it for a long time. There were more than 10 vexing demons in front of him, but unfortunately, he couldn't draw out another death demon. He didn't know if the realm of freedom sensed this, and was unwilling to lend him more troops. Other than cursing in his heart for being stingy, Li Qingshan couldn't do anything. However, this death demon was enough. It could save him a lot of trouble when he attacked the Myriad Appearance sect. It could be considered a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, this death demon had been in his sea of consciousness and was now exhausted and distorted beyond recognition. He needed to think of a way to deal with it. At this time, Wan Jianfeng slowly descended from the sky. The spiritual light around him was dim, and his eyes were cold and empty. He seemed very weak. Although Li Qingshan helped him subdue all the vexing demons, no one could help him with the 5 yin demons inside him. Thus, the 5 yin demons were too strong, and he couldn't control himself. In the end, he could only abandon his physical body to deal with the heart demon. Now he could only be considered a ghost immortal. But even so, his cultivation had undergone a drastic change. Ordinary human immortals were no match for him. Moreover, he wasn't an evil god, so he wouldn't receive the attention of the 9 heavens. He would be a good helper. Moreover, without the shackles of the physical body, his sword intent was even purer. However, that was all. Li Qingshan plucked a spirit bead and gave it to him. Wan Jianfeng's empty eyes burned with passion again. He gratefully accepted the bead and went to the side to meditate and recover his strength. There are 35 more. Li Qingshan calculated silently. He lowered his head and looked at Shen Yushu. Seeing that he was like an ostrich buried in the sand, Li Qingshan couldn't help but sneer. Shen Yushu! All the hairs on Shen Yushu's body stood up. He kowtowed as if he was pounding garlic. If he had just entered the 100 herb garden, he might have been able to say a few unyielding words, and even bravely face death like Wan Jianfeng. But under the continuous pressure, his will had completely collapsed. He was completely swallowed by fear. Using a voice like a duck that was being strangled, he shouted, "I am willing to surrender. I am willing to surrender. Eldest senior brother, I beg you to spare my life on account of us being from the same sect. I will definitely be loyal and devoted. I will not hesitate to die 10,000 times." "All right," Li Qingshan said lightly. Shen Yushu felt as if he had heard the voice of an immortal. As if he had been pardoned, he kowtowed again and again. "Thank you, eldest senior brother." "No, thank you, master. Thank you, master. I have a use for you." Li Qingshan lightly flicked his fingers. Let me borrow your Yin spirit first. With a bang, Shen Yushu's chest shook. The Yin spirit left his body. Receiving Li Qingshan's signal, the dead demon immediately pounced forward. The Yin spirit that looked like Shen Yushu back, then had a face full of wrinkles. It quickly aged. Don't! Li Qingshan. Shen Yushu looked at Li Qingshan with eyes full of despair and hatred. Li Qingshan looked back at him coldly. The dead demon was like a cicada lying on a tree, sucking Shen Yushu's will and life in big mouthfuls. In a short while it was completely sucked. His disciple left behind a fleshly body that swayed and fell forward. Let me borrow your body again. Li Qingshan bent down. His mountain-like body completely entered Shen Yushu's body. He stretched out his hand to support the body that was about to fall. Without turning his head, he waved his hand. The dead demon led more than 10 vexing demons into the void. Wan Jianfeng turned into a sword light and soared into the sky. The 100 herb garden seemed to have entered late autumn. Everywhere was withered and yellow, desolate and lifeless. It seemed to be in accordance with the saying in the legends. Wherever the demon star goes, swords and weapons rise everywhere, not leaving a single blade of grass. Myriad appearance sect, I am coming. Writing Chinese net. Chapter 1672. 2:45 in the morning. The long night was coming to an end. The sea was shrouded in fog, and even the sound of the waves seemed abnormally quiet. The lights of Wanxiang City, that never went out, dyed the thick fog into an orange-yellow haze. Stepping on the fog-soaked stone path, Li Qingshan was walking in this haze. The signboards on both sides of the road shone with colorful spirit lights, reflecting colorful halos in the thick fog. The streets were filled with people, but there were no fewer than during the day. Many voices came from the fog, but it was no quieter than during the day. This was a city of cultivators, and it was not bound by the weather. It was truly a city that never slept, but no one seemed to notice the approaching storm. Despite being in the enemy's camp, Li Qingshan did not seem to be in a hurry. He strolled through the streets, and even had the time to buy a pot of wine and eat a few steaming meat buns as breakfast. Perhaps Spirit Emperor Gui Hai was looking at him at this moment, but he did not want to expose his identity so quickly. He finished the pot of wine in one go and exhaled, feeling warm and comfortable in his stomach. He liked Shen Yushu's body. Without tempering it, the wine would be stronger. Speaking of which, Li Qingshan had been a disciple of the Myriad Phenomenon sect for so many years, but he did not have many opportunities to stroll around Wanxiang City. Now that he was strolling around the city, it seemed like he wanted to take this opportunity to have a good tour. However, although his footsteps were unhurried and his face was slightly tipsy, his eyes were calm and sharp. Just as Pai Yangqiu said, this array is flawless. The Myriad Phenomenon sect's protective array was commonly known as the Myriad Phenomenon Array, but it did not have a specific name. Just like Spirit Emperor Gui Hai, it seemed non-existent yet omnipresent. It was mysterious and profound, meticulous and thorough. Pai Yangqiu, the head of the Abundance Sanctum, had stayed in Wanxiang City for so many years, but he could not completely understand the changes. Li Qingshan originally thought that Pai Yangqiu's cultivation was insufficient, but now he could not help but admire Spirit Emperor Gui Hai's methods. He could not help but look up, his gaze piercing through the thick fog, outlining the majestic posture of the Heavenly Book Tower. The Heavenly Book Tower was the core of the 10,000 elephant formation. It was both its strongest part and its greatest weakness. As long as he entered the building, with this embodiment's cultivation level, he had a high chance of cracking the array before Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai could react. However, Spirit Venerable Gui Hai had sealed the Heavenly Book Tower ahead of time, blocking the biggest loophole. It was unknown if he had foresight, or was it just out of caution, or both. A spirit turtle that had undergone 6 heavenly tribulations, and one of the most powerful formations in the 6 paths of reincarnation. Without either one of them, Li Qingshan would not care at all. However, when they were combined, it became extremely troublesome. This combination could even hold off a demon god for a while. If an evil god was trapped in the formation, it would basically be a dead end. Li Qingshan was not completely confident that he could successfully break the formation. Since that's the case, there's no other way. Li Qingshan tossed aside the empty wine jug in his hand and bought another jug of wine from a roadside tavern. As he drank, he walked towards the Heavenly Book Tower. His figure gradually disappeared into the colorful fog. At this moment, the sky was gradually brightening. The lanterns were extinguished one by one, but the fog grew thicker. Many figures moved quickly through it, as if something was surging in the thick fog. Li Qingshan arrived at the bottom of the Heavenly Book Tower. He was in a large square with a radius of 3,000 meters. In front of him was a stone wall over 30 meters tall. It was the eastern base of the Heavenly Book Tower, but it also had an even more resounding name, the Myriad Phenomenon List. Now, other than the fact that it was especially dark due to the fog, it did not look much different from an ordinary stone wall. Some foreign cultivators were waiting for the sunrise. When the sunlight shone on the stone wall, it would reveal the names of all the Myriad Phenomenon sect disciples. It was a major site in Myriad Phenomenon City, known as Illuminating the World. Naturally, it meant that the name that appeared on the Myriad Phenomenon list would shine like sunlight across the world. This was both a good wish and a realistic situation. The name Li Qingshan was a name that everyone knew in the cultivation world of the mortal realm. However, he did not need to look to know that Li Qingshan's name would definitely not appear on it. He also did not need to use this method to let the world know his name. Above the stone wall was a white stone staircase that was more than 100 meters wide and hundreds of meters long. At the end of the staircase was the eastern gate of the Heavenly Book Tower. At this moment, the gate was tightly shut, but Li Qingshan still intended to give it a try. He wanted to see if he could break through the gate and enter the tower before Spirit Venerable Guihai could react. However, he did not have much hope. After all, the one sleeping in the story was not a turtle. Just as he was about to step around the stone wall, he suddenly stood still. He raised his thick eyebrows and looked back. A few figures gradually appeared in the mist, appearing on the square one by one. They were all faces that Li Qingshan was familiar with. Basically all the true disciples of the Myriad sect had come, and in the lead was the first senior sister Dai Mengfan. Behind them were the Myriad Phenomenon sect's advanced disciples. They all had solemn expressions and were ready for battle. Their expressions were somewhat dazed as they did not know what had happened. However, they suddenly received an order from Spirit Venerable Guihai, saying that the Myriad Phenomenon sect was being invaded by external enemies. Only then did Li Qingshan realize that the Myriad Phenomenon sect had already been activated. This thick fog was no longer ordinary fog, otherwise he would have noticed it long ago. Until this moment, he still could not sense the existence of Spirit Venerable Guihai. Shen Yushu, why are you here? Dai Mengfan shouted loudly. How is the 100-herb garden? When she received the order from Spirit Venerable Guihai, she was initially on guard, but when she saw Shen Yushu, she was relieved. However, she felt that things were strange. How could a mere Shen Yushu be called an external enemy invasion? He was just a Yin spirit cultivator. How could he threaten the Myriad Phenomenon sect? Even if there was, Spirit Venerable Guihai could easily suppress him. Why did he have to secretly summon all the true disciples? How did you find me? Li Qingshan ignored Dai Mengfan and asked loudly towards the Heavenly Book building. He felt that he was still acting the state of mind that Shen Yushu had when he returned to the Myriad Phenomenon sect. He did not reveal any of his aura, so it was unlikely that Spirit Venerable Guihai could calculate his existence. He could not help but feel a little curious. Well, it must be through his walking posture or micro-expressions that he noticed something strange. With the memory of that old tortoise, he might even remember how long Shen Yushu's every step was, and that today's steps were a few millimeters longer than usual. You've drunk too much. A cold and vast voice came through the turbulent fog from the Heavenly Book building, but only Li Qingshan and a few true disciples could hear it. Ah! Li Qingshan looked at the wine bottle in his hand and felt a little embarrassed. He did drink a lot of wine along the way, about a few hundred bottles. Since it's now, why don't you leave quickly? Don't forget the promise you made to me, said Spirit Venerable Guihai. Alas, the world is unpredictable. Who can predict it? I don't want to be the enemy of the Myriad Phenomenon sect. As long as you hand over something, I will leave immediately and will not stay. I will be merciful when we meet again in the future." The true disciples looked at each other. Shin Yishu's tone was too arrogant. He actually said he would be merciful to Spirit Venerable. Spirit Venerable's behavior was really strange. It seemed that he deliberately lowered his voice to negotiate with Shin Yishu. He did not want to have a conflict, but he also did not want others to hear him. "What is it?" asked Spirit Venerable Guihai. "The myriad heavenly book," Li Qingshan said solemnly. "You already have 17 of the 38 volumes of the heavenly book. Are you still not satisfied?" "I don't want 38 volumes. I only want 1 volume. I want the real myriad heavenly book." Chapter 1673. At the end of the sea and sky, a smear of white appeared in the east. The sun was about to rise, but the mist became thicker. The lofty heavenly tome tower was vaguely visible in the surging mist, as if it was about to collapse. Spirit Sovereign Guihai remained silent inside. The heavenly tome of all. All the true disciples had heard of this legend before. Generally speaking, the heavenly tome of all was just the collective name for all the heavenly tomes. All the heavenly tomes added together would form the heavenly tome of all. However, it was said that the heavenly tome of all existed in the heavenly tome of all. All the heavenly tomes originated from this heavenly tome of all. It was truly all-encompassing, containing all the cultivation methods and paths of cultivation in the world. "That's just a legend," Dai Mengfan scolded. "You're not Shin Yushu. Who are you exactly?" The more she listened, the more she felt that something was amiss. Shin Yushu was a mere formal disciple, and he only practiced the heavenly tome of nature. How could he have 17 heavenly tomes? Even if it was a true disciple, apart from the eldest senior brother, it was unlikely that he would have so many heavenly tomes. However, it was impossible for Spirit Sovereign Guihai to speak carelessly. For some reason, anxiety and panic surged through his heart. A terrifying thought was on the verge of forming. Legend. Li Qingshan shook his head. If he had not practiced the spirit turtle transformation, he would not have been able to confirm the existence of the heavenly tome of all either. However, after achieving the spirit turtle transformation, he was 100% certain that the 17 heavenly tomes in his possession came from the same source. Actually, he did not need other cultivation methods, too much with the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine. The reason why he had to obtain the heavenly tome of all was not for himself, but for the lives of the demon domain. As everyone knew, cultivation methods had a great influence on a person's mind. The cultivation methods popular in the demon domain were all cruel and evil. Even if regular people practiced them, they would become filled with malice and evil. In the past demon domain, only by practicing cultivation methods like that could it be easier for them to gain the favor of the demonic heavens. But now, Li Qingshan had broken through the barrier between the pure land of bliss and the demon domain, returning them to the Qilin paradise. As a result, demon folk could not be reborn as demon folk. This was freeing demon folk from their innate state of oblivion, but it was impossible for them to go back to being acquired. Even if Li Qingshan had already become a god, it was impossible for him to deduce the infinite cultivation methods derived from the 3,000 great Daos. This required too much time, and what he lacked the most right now was time. The enemy would not give him too much time. Therefore, he had to obtain the 10,000 phenomenon heavenly tome at all costs. Many years ago, what he cared about were elixirs and medicines, but now, what he cared about was food and vegetables. The value of things always changed according to the situation. At this time, perhaps even the gods of the 9 heavens did not realize the special value of the divine tome of all, which was why he had the opportunity to attack the myriad phenomenon sect. The 10,000 elephant formation has been activated. No matter who you are, don't even think of leaving this place alive today. Dai Mengfan was infuriated by his disrespectful attitude. She immediately put on the imposing manner of the eldest senior sister, but it seemed like she was hiding something. Li Qingshan suddenly turned to look at Dai Mengfan. "Junior martial sister Dai, do you really not recognize me?" This was the side profile of an ordinary man. It was so ordinary that there was nothing special about it. After his physical body was destroyed by Li Qingshan, Shen Yushu had been using the myriad phenomenon sect's spirit beast garden, which was specially reared as a flying insect. It was usually in the form of an insect, but after being stimulated by spells, it could quickly grow into a human form. Its bones and blood vessels were no different from a mortal's, except that it naturally did not have a soul. It was specially made for people to possess it, and its body and appearance had no special characteristics. But that playful expression, that familiar smile. Dai Mingfan's pupils constricted. She took a big step back and said in horror, "You are Li Shu." Li Qingshan placed his index finger on his lips, and Dai Mingfan's words came to an abrupt halt. He was still waiting for Spirit Venerable Gui Hai's decision. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai clearly did not want to start a war with him, so there was still the possibility of negotiation. If the matter blew up, they could only fight. Dai Mingfan looked at Li Qingshan with wide eyes, as if someone was choking her neck. Her hair all stood on end. Her towering chest rose and fell rapidly, as she gasped for breath like a startled herbivore. She did not have any of the dignity of an eldest senior sister. Yes, of course she knew that Spirit Venerable Gui Hai was in Myriad Phenomenon City. Even if Li Qingshan's main body came here, he would not be able to do much. But these rational judgments were completely useless at this moment. Only the most primitive animal instincts were left, taking deep breaths to ensure that the body moved vigorously, contracting pupils to focus, tensing up the body in preparation to react, and then escape. The further the better. She had never forgotten the dignity of a tiger. The other direct disciples also reacted. They either cast spells, gripped their weapons tightly, or activated their cultivation techniques. In an instant, they all assumed a defensive stance. Although they did not lose their composure like Dai Mingfan, even Leng Yuan, who had the deepest and coldest temperament, felt a trace of fear in his heart. Clang! The sound of swords being unsheathed could be heard. Seeing that the direct disciples were facing a formidable enemy, the chamber disciples at the back did not know what was happening, and simply raised the weapons in their hands. In an instant, spirit lights shone in the square, and the atmosphere was tense. Countless auras rose, stirring up a thick fog that surged like waves and scattered on Li Qingshan's body. However, Li Qingshan was unmoved and said with a smile, "Junior sister Dai, I heard that you're a new official, and the one you burned was me. I'm only following orders. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai announced that you've fallen to the demonic path, so he asked me to be the eldest senior sister. I initially rejected it." Dai Mingfan's eyes flickered, and she almost did not dare to look straight at Li Qingshan. Like a child who had made a huge mistake, she mumbled and explained, causing the other direct disciples to look down on her. They did not expect her to be so timid. At this moment, the direct disciples had already calmed down, especially Leng Yuan. As he circulated his cultivation technique, his mind was as cold as ice, completely dispelling that trace of fear. He rationally determined that Li Qingshan was only an avatar here. Although Li Qingshan's main body had already undergone 6 heavenly tribulations, the cultivation of his avatar was at least 1 realm lower, which was the same as them. If it was a one-on-one fight, no one had the confidence to win, but this situation was nothing to be afraid of. Leng Yuan said proudly, "Li Qingshan, humans and demons cannot coexist. Since you've fallen to the demonic path, you're no longer the eldest senior brother of the Myriad Phenomenon sect, but our enemy." The smile on Li Qingshan's face faded, and he said calmly and seriously, "Yes, you're also my enemy. Tong Dagong's blood will not be spilled in vain." Dai Mingfan looked at Leng Yuan in shock, as if she was looking at an ignorant child provoking a ferocious beast. She could not understand why he still wanted to provoke Li Qingshan. Was he really not afraid of death? Feeling the contempt of the other true disciples for her, she could not help but roar in her heart. "Can't you feel it? You'll really die." In the Myriad Phenomenon sect, apart from Letian, she was the true disciple who was the best at divination. In her opinion, the air was not filled with thick white mist, but pitch-black death aura, making it hard for her to breathe. Back when she faced demon god Swani's avatar outside Black Cloud City, she did not feel so terrified. It was as if Li Qingshan could crush them all to dust with a flick of his finger. She did not believe in so-called rational judgment. She only believed in her intuition, which she had cultivated for many years. If Spirit Sage Guihai was not present, she would have already begged for mercy from Li Qingshan, or immediately escaped, as far as she could. No, I shouldn't have come at all. Spirit Sage Guihai summoned us not to let us watch a show, but to send us to our deaths as pawns. At this moment, Dai Mengfan suddenly realized that other than Li Liehua, who was in seclusion, and Wan Jianfeng, who was confronting Wan Yaozhu outside the 100-herb garden, Lu Tian was the only true disciple who had not been summoned. That cunning bastard! Writing pin Chinese net. Chapter 1674. At this moment, the thick fog surged violently, and the heavenly book tower became clearer. Spirit Venerable Guihai's vast voice came from within. Li Qingshan, the heavenly tome of all is the supreme treasure of the myriad sect. Master has ordered me to protect the myriad sect, so I can't give the heavenly tome of all to an outsider, much less a demon god. The voice was no longer limited to this square, but spread throughout the streets and alleys of the myriad sect, shaking the sea. Demon god? Not to mention the reactions of other people in the city, all the true disciples were aghast, and involuntarily took a few steps back. Only Lung Yuan stood there without moving. A dazzling ring of ice suddenly rose up around his body, and it revolved rapidly to protect him tightly. Although he did not feel fear due to the characteristics of his cultivation technique, his heart sank deeply. The giant wolf under him also seemed extremely uneasy, wanting to retreat with its tail between its legs. The corner of Dai Mengfan's mouth twitched. She wanted to say, I knew it. But she suddenly felt that everything was clear. All the anxiety, agitation, and uneasiness in the past few days had a very clear and concrete reason. The nightmare had come true. She felt a strange sense of release. She said lightly, if my guess is correct, he is the fiend star. At this moment, no one despised her anymore. They all stared at the man in the fog. Then there's no other way. Li Qingshan shrugged. All expression vanished from his face that was as ordinary as it could be. But two specks of red light lit up in the depths of his eyes. All disciples, listen to my order. Kill Li Qingshan's incarnation. Today's battle concerns the survival of the sect. If anyone dares to take a step back. Before Spirit Venerable Guihai finished speaking, Li Qingshan had already soared into the sky. All the true disciples reacted instantly. They were like large bows that were pulled taut as they shot out the arrows in their hands. Lung Yuan was the calmest and the quickest to react. Without making any movement, the rings of ice around him shot out 3,600 beams of cold light. Each beam of cold light was a piece of ice dust that was even finer than snowflakes. But any one of them was enough to freeze a whale to death in an instant. Li Qingshan was basically a living target in the air. He did not dodge, nor did he block. The 3,600 streaks of cold light all shot into his body, immediately covering him in a layer of frost. But his skin was as red as fire, like a cooked crab. His muscles were bulging, and his face was full of blue veins, making him look extremely terrifying. At this moment, the inner disciple in the back also reacted and released the spells in their hands. Wang Juanxing was also in the crowd. His face was so twisted that it did not seem human anymore. When he heard the name Li Qingshan, he felt like he was facing an imminent disaster. Moreover, he seemed to sense that Li Qingshan's gaze had paused on him slightly when he scanned through the crowd. The meaning it contained almost made his blood flow in reverse. He knew very well that the deaths of Tong Dagong and the others were greatly related to him, and he had always been proud of it. Even when he was expelled from the Department of Law, he did not regret it. This was his revenge against Li Qingshan. It was not until the moment Li Qingshan targeted him that he felt regret, and he had never regretted it so much in his life. Who would have thought that Li Qingshan's revenge would be so fierce? Therefore, he did not dare to hold back. With a roar, he mobilized all his mana, condensed it into a giant axe, and chopped at Li Qingshan's head. Boom, 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 boom. In an instant, spiritual light broke through the thick fog and filled the square. These spells of different attributes collided with each other, causing a series of explosions, and thousands of dazzling lights shot out. Li Qingshan exploded into a cloud of blood mist, which evaporated before it could dissipate. We won! Wang Juanxing was overjoyed and almost jumped up. The true disciples looked at each other, feeling that it was too easy. It's the myriad phenomena array, Leng Yuan suddenly said. He could clearly see that apart from the cold beam he shot out, all the other Dharma spells had missed. Li Qingshan's body was not frozen to pieces. Instead, it was more like he had suddenly exploded under immense and invisible pressure. The other true disciples also instantly understood. Yes, this was a battle between Li Qingshan and Spirit Sovereign Guihai. They were only supporting him. What was truly effective was not their Dharma spells, but the myriad phenomena array presided over by Spirit Sovereign Guihai. Spirit Sovereign Guihai's usage of the array formation was extremely ingenious. He did not waste any energy, and all his power was concentrated on Li Qingshan. It was to the point that they did not even feel the array formation's activation. They could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Even if Li Qingshan had become a fiend celestial, his embodiment was only an evil god. His cultivation level was equal to Spirit Sovereign Guihai's. He had foolishly attempted to infiltrate the city and landed in the myriad phenomena array, so he was naturally no match for Spirit Sovereign Guihai. However, Daimengfan's expression was solemn. The deathly aura that permeated the air turned thicker, and the unease in her heart intensified. Without hesitation, she swallowed another adversity-surpassing pill. This was a treasure she had prepared to deal with the great tribulation of heaven and earth. It could raise her cultivation level several times in a short period of time, but the price was lifespan, which was the most precious thing to cultivators. At that moment, the light from the Dharma spell explosion had yet to dissipate. She saw a massive shadow in the dazzling light. Is that the Heaven Book Tower? The shadow was moving. It's not the Heaven Book Tower. Be careful. Daimengfan's pupils constricted as time seemed to slow down. A massive head slowly peeked out from the light. It looked like a human but not a human. It looked like a beast, but not a beast. There was a pair of huge antlers on its head, and the patterns on its forehead condensed into the word king. It looked like a deer, but not a deer, like a tiger, but not a tiger. The massive mountain-like body seemed to be under immense and invisible pressure. Its back was arched high, and then it bowed deeply. The monster opened its mouth, revealing a mouthful of fangs. Its face looked like it was smiling angrily. It took a deep breath, and its chest puffed up high, nearly touching the ground. Tiger demon roar. At that moment, Wang Juanxing, who was in the crowd, was extremely certain that the monster was staring at him. However, he seemed to be in a daze, unable to react. An inherited disciple happened to be standing between him and the monster, and was struck by a blast of air. The blast of air was no more than 10 feet in diameter. Although it was completely transparent, it was clearly distinguishable. It turned into an oval shape as it flew, and the moment it hit the inherited disciple, it exploded, turning into countless wind blades and an earth-shattering roar. It rushed through the clouds like a huge storm. Although the inherited disciple had used his life-saving magic treasure and cast several spells to protect himself, they were all torn apart. Spells, magic treasures, Taoist robes, flesh, the translucent young spirit escaped, but it covered its ears in pain and let out a tragic howl. This was just instinct and had no practical meaning. Although the young spirit looked similar to a human, its structure was completely different. It was closer to a mass of energy. The howl stopped abruptly. The young spirit had been shattered. Wang Juanxing only felt a gust of wind pass by, and bloody marks appeared on his face and body. He raised his right hand, which was covered in crisscrossing bloody marks. With a slight movement, his hand would shatter and scatter on the ground. Li. He wanted to speak, but his tongue was broken into several pieces. He wanted to raise his head, but the world suddenly tilted and spun. Seeing that all the disciples around him were standing still, the world suddenly shattered. I'm dead. This was his last thought. Writing Chinese Net. Chapter 1675. As a newly promoted inner disciple of the Myriad sect, Spiritual Master Qing Yang, was also standing in the crowd. However, he was still proud of his status, so he stood further away. When he heard the 3 words Li Qingshan, his heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect to see the real person so soon. When he heard the 2 words Devil God, he already felt that something was wrong. However, other than using 2 protective spells, he didn't have time to do anything else. He didn't dare to run away. When the other inner disciples attacked, he could only follow suit. At this moment, he widened his eyes in shock and disbelief as he watched the high and mighty direct disciple being killed on the spot. He also faintly saw the crisscrossing white lines in the air. Wherever the white lines passed, it was like a sharp sickle cutting through a wheat field. The inner disciples in front of him fell one after another. He hurriedly retreated, retreating dozens of feet in an instant. However, the crisscrossing white lines were already in front of him, covering everything. There was no way to avoid them. My life is over. At this moment, the white lines gradually twisted and thickened. Suddenly, they disappeared in the air, followed by a shrill scream. It turned out that each white line was a wind blade, and each wind blade turned into a gale. Together, they formed a real storm. Bang! With a muffled sound, the 2 protective spells shattered. Spiritual Master Qing Yang was clearly flying backwards, but he felt as if he had hit a wall. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The moment the blood came out of his mouth, the gale hit his face and sent him flying into the air. His face was covered in blood, and his body was in pain. However, at this moment, he only felt the joy of surviving a disaster. Rumble! A thunderous sound rang out. The storm was no longer restrained. It released all of its energy and blew away dozens of buildings. Bricks, tiles, and wood splinters filled the sky. The sky suddenly darkened. Some pillars that required several people to wrap their arms around were sent hundreds of feet into the air like straws. Spiritual Master Qing Yang was like a withered leaf in the wind. He allowed the gale to blow him into the sky, far away from the heavenly scripture tower. However, in the myriad phenomenon city below, with the bloody mouth of the monster as the center, a large area of ruins spread out in a fan shape. He was extremely shocked. I'm afraid only the power of heaven and earth can compare to this kind of divine ability. That monster is Miao Zhenzi's husband Li Qingshan. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, so fast that the Yang God cultivators didn't even have time to react. In the blink of an eye, an elite disciple had perished, and nearly half of the inner disciples had been slaughtered. This horrifying slaughter caused the other elite disciples to be dumbstruck. At that moment, they completely understood Spirit Venerable Guihai's words. Li Qingshan had already become a fiend celestial. In recent years, there had only been one more divine star in the sky. It was the Chaos Demon Star. Dai Mengfan recalled the night when the demon star first rose, and the true God fell. The great tribulation of heaven and earth has already descended. He is that demon star. However, as the great senior sister of the myriad appearance sect, she couldn't be like Spiritual Master Qing Yang and go with the wind. She pursed her lips and steeled her heart. With a flip of her hand, she took out a sparkling jade seal. This was her life's magic treasure, and if it was destroyed, the loss would be great. However, at this moment, she couldn't care less and threw the jade seal into the air. The jade seal grew with the wind, and in the blink of an eye, it was like a small mountain, smashing down on the head of the monster. The strange thing was that after the monster let out this terrifying roar, it also seemed to be seriously injured. Its body fell forward, barely supporting its body with its hands, and the ground immediately cracked and collapsed. With a loud bang, the jade seal smashed on its head. Its head almost fell to the ground, but it ignored Dai Mengfan. Instead, it looked back at the Heavenly Book building, releasing a strong killing intent. The copper bells under the eaves of the Heavenly Book building were blown by the strong wind and rang with a harsh buzzing sound. At this time, the thick fog dispersed and the sun rose in the east. A black-clothed old man was standing on the balcony of the highest floor of the Heavenly Book building. A pair of silent and deep eyes stared at Li Qingshan below. His eyes met with that pair of red eyes, but he still remained calm. Whether it was the destruction of myriad phenomenon city, or the slaughter of his disciples, it did not faze him at all. Instead, it was more accurate to say that everything was within his expectations. He spread his arms, and his wide sleeves ruffled in the wind. His hands were empty, and a crystal ball hovered between his 10 splayed fingers. It was the core of the myriad phenomenon formation. The crystal ball was as dark as the deep sea, but there was a vague Li Qingshan inside, no matter what he had become. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Li Qingshan was no stranger to this move, but only when it landed on him did he truly sense its power. He felt like he had sunk into the depths of the sea. Every inch of his skin bore thousands of tons of pressure. When regular cultivators pushed the formation to the limit, they would only unleash the power of the formation itself. However, the spirit sovereign of the seas had become one with the myriad phenomenon formation, pouring all of his cultivation into the formation. The myriad phenomenon formation originally possessed various transformations, even surpassing the 72 Marquises formation of the 100 Herb Garden. However, the spirit sovereign of the seas was abnormally clear-headed. He understood that these transformations were superfluous in front of a true god's avatar. They would only increase flaws. Therefore, there were no saber flashes or sword shadows, no ice, fire, wind, or thunder. There was only the suppression of absolute strength. Li Qingshan had to unleash all his strength to be able to resist it. Shen Yishu's body had not undergone body tempering. Under the clash of the two terrifying forces, he could not even last a breath before exploding into a mist of blood. Although Li Qingshan had taken the opportunity to kill Wang Juanxing and a legacy disciple, avenging Tong Dagong and company, he was naturally unable to resist the suppression of the myriad phenomenon formation when he used his divine power with all his might. However powerful this move of his was, he would have to endure the same degree of damage, and if he ignored these legacy disciples and focused on cracking the formation, he would definitely be disturbed and become the straw that broke the camel's back. In such a contest of absolute strength, he could not afford to be distracted. However, in such a situation, it was inevitable that he would have to put in some effort to kill all these legacy disciples. The myriad phenomenon formation had sealed his connection with the outside world, preventing him from replenishing the spirit qi he expended. However, the spirit sovereign of the seas could rely on the myriad phenomenon city's blessed grotto heaven to have an endless supply of spirit qi. It was equivalent to being in an invincible position. Therefore, the reason why the spirit sovereign of the seas had summoned these legacy disciples was very clear. It was for him to kill. Dai Mengfan was overjoyed when she succeeded in one move. She brought out the might of the eldest senior sister and shouted sternly, "We cannot stop. Continue attacking. Anyone who dares to escape will be a traitor." The legacy disciples had already thought of retreating, but at that moment, they pulled themselves together. They felt that Li Qingshan was not invincible. For the first time, they had some admiration for this eldest senior sister. Lung Yuan attacked immediately. Ice rings swirled around his body, attacking and defending as one, shooting out thousands of cold beams. The giant frost wolf he was riding on also opened its mouth wide and spat out an icy flame that charged straight at Li Qingshan's face, as if it was responding to his just now tiger roar. At this time, one of the true disciples sneered and said, "If you want to die, then go ahead. I'll take my leave first." He immediately turned into a streak of light and flew out of the city. Paiyangqiao. Dai Mengfan was both shocked and angry at the same time. Although she rarely participated in Black Cloud City's battles and didn't know much about commanding, she understood the human heart. In such a life-and-death battle, if they couldn't stop the deserters in time, it would definitely lead to a rout. Sure enough, besides Lung Yuan, all the other elite disciples were shaken, and they hesitated to make a move, causing the morale that had just been raised to instantly plummet. Writing Pin Chinese Net. Chapter 1676. The Spirit Turtle's Profound Shell. The cold light and ice flames arrived in front of Li Qingshan, but they were blocked by a faint blue screen of light composed of hexagons. But under the heavy pressure of the jade seal the size of a hill, his head lowered even more, as if he could not bear the weight anymore. The marble tiles under his body cracked and collapsed, and a crack appeared on the list of all creations behind him. It was not because Dai Mingfan was impressive, but because he needed to use all of his strength to fend off Spirit Sovereign Guihai. Every bit of additional pressure was like adding fuel to the fire. However, the corner of Li Qingshan's lips curled into a smile. He understood these true disciples all too well. If they struck out together, they might actually be able to help Spirit Sovereign Guihai injure him. Pai Yongqiu's escape came at the perfect time. Old turtle, let's see if you're going to do anything. At that moment, all the true disciples' attention was focused on Pai Yongqiu. They watched as the streak of light traveled off into the distance. They might be able to stop him, but none of them took action. If Pai Yongqiu fled, there would definitely be a second, a third. The remaining people would become Li Qingshan's targets, and their chances of dying would increase drastically. As for the last person to flee, it was basically certain death. No one wanted to be the last person, so the best solution was to be the second person to flee. However, if everyone thought that way, then the result would be a collapse. Pai Yongqiu's streak of light shot off like a bolt of lightning. Just when he was about to fly out of Myriad Phenomenon City, Spirit Sovereign Guihai's eyes, that were as deep as the sea, suddenly swiveled. For the first time, his gaze left Li Qingshan and shot towards Pai Yongqiu. Pai Yongqiu had already cast down layers of defenses around him when he surrounded Li Qingshan just now. The 24 bamboo slips revolved around him, split into 3 layers that resonated with one another, and formed a formation. It shone with layers upon layers of light, like an enormous city. It was his life-bound arcane treasure, the bamboo tome of the abode. Not only could the Dongdi bamboo book be used to create and break formations, but it could also simulate most of the formations in the world. At this moment, it was simulating a Golden City 10 Palaces formation. Although its power was only 30%, and its duration was limited, the Tao of formations emphasized defense. This Golden City 10 Palaces formation was one of the best. In the past, when Pai Yongqiu fought with others, it had never been broken. However, just as Spirit Venerable Guihai's gaze landed on him, the layers of mystic light cracked. There was a series of cracking sounds as the 24 bamboo slips broke. The Golden City 10 Palaces array immediately collapsed, and the flying light also froze in midair. So. The broken bamboo slips seemed to be driven by an invisible force, stabbing deep into Pai Yongqiu's skin. Pai Yongqiu felt excruciating pain all over as he turned his head in horror. He met Spirit Venerable Guihai's deep eyes. His lips wriggled as if he wanted to say something, but before he could open his mouth, his face caved inwards, but not a single drop of blood spurted out. His flesh and blood, bones, hair, clothes, everything about him was compressed to a single point. His bones broke and his limbs contracted. In the blink of an eye, his body had turned into a ball of flesh that was constantly being compressed until it was the size of a fist. Spirit Venerable Guihai moved away, and the invisible force suddenly disappeared. The fist-sized ball of flesh suddenly expanded, but before it could completely explode, it was devoured by a ball of light. Boom! There was an earth-shattering boom. It was as if another sun had risen in the sky, but it was thousands of times bigger than the sun above the sea. It emitted a dazzling light that could blind ordinary people. It was Pai Yongqiu's young soul that had exploded. Just like his body that had turned into a ball of flesh, his internal structure had been completely crushed and destroyed, turning into pure energy that was released. 1,000 years of cultivation had been destroyed in an instant. The true disciples turned pale from the light. All of them were dumbfounded, and all of them had given up on escaping. Li Qingshan and Spirit Venerable Guihai had each attacked once, and 2 young soul cultivators had died instantly. In the face of absolute power, there was no way they could save their lives. At this moment, they all understood their identities. Usually, they might be high and mighty true disciples and young soul cultivators, but at this time, they were just pawns crossing the river. They could only advance, not retreat. Spirit Venerable Guihai wanted them to fight with Li Qingshan to the death, so they could only rush forward and die, hoping to fight for a chance of survival in this desperate situation. The great calamity of heaven and earth had already descended upon them. At the same time, There was a loud bang from the ground. Just as Spirit Venerable Guihai was suppressing Pai Yangxiu, Dai Mingfan's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly leaped into the air, but she did not take the opportunity to escape. Instead, she gritted her teeth and pointed at the top of Li Qingshan's head like a sword. Order! The jade seal grew larger and larger. Its entire body was crystal clear, flowing with mysterious runes. It had already become heavier than metal and stone. It pressed down fiercely, as though it wanted to crush Li Qingshan's head. She knew that Li Qingshan's counterattack was coming, and all of them could die in the next moment. Boom! The jade seal shattered into pieces like a landslide. An arm covered in thick black hair stretched out and abruptly expanded, grabbing at Lung Yuan. Ape demon arms. Li Qingshan strictly followed the order of revenge. He would first kill the mastermind, then kill the threat. Lung Yuan wanted to retreat, but he could not move. He was like a bug sealed in amber, and could only close his eyes and wait for death. At this time, he could no longer maintain absolute calm, and his eyes revealed a look of horror. Li Qingshan's simple grab contained all sorts of ape demon powers. Spirit Venerable Guihai was distracted, so how could he allow Lung Yuan to escape? Suddenly, the giant wolf beneath Lung Yuan lunged forward, revealing a mouth full of fangs as it roared and bit at the black hand. The black hand's 5 fingers tightened, and the roar turned into a wail. Li Qingshan did not expect that his grab would miss. Shattering Dai Mengfan's jade seal had wasted some time, and the demon wolf was loyal to its master, blocking the calamity for Lung Yuan. If this were in the past, he might have praised such actions and spared the demon wolf's life, or given it a quick death. But now, he stared at Lung Yuan as he slowly tightened his fingers. Fur and flesh seeped out from the gaps between his fingers. The demon wolf's wail became even more tragic. Although it was a demon sovereign, it could not put up any resistance in front of Li Qingshan. It could not even self-destruct its demon core. Li Qingshan. Lung Yuan could no longer maintain his calm. His heart burned with endless hatred for Li Qingshan, and he wished he could perish together with him. He charged at Li Qingshan without a care. With a wave of his right hand, he formed an ice blade and slashed at the black hand. Junior brother Lung, be careful. Don't fall for it. Dai Mingfan exclaimed, but she could not stop him in time. At this moment, Spirit Venerable Guihai had already suppressed Pai Yangxiu and turned his gaze over. Li Qingshan felt the pressure on his body increase. He tightened his fingers and squeezed the demon wolf to death. His thumb and index finger held a bloody demon core and flicked it. The demon core flew out of his hand, and a large hole appeared in Lung Yuan's chest. It suddenly exploded as it penetrated his body. Boom! 2 loud sounds combined into one. Pai Yangxiu and Lung Yuan died at almost the same time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.